A New Hope, Nier Chapter 74. You can read all of Azazyl's fan-fiction stories by subscribing to patreon.com/Azazyel. With my android's effects put away and now clad in Beacon's uniform as Ozpin decided to give them jobs improving the CCT tower here in Vale, which was basically the internet and phone service mega tower. Now typically you would think Ozpin wouldn't let my androids anywhere near that tower. But the defenses for the tower were so laughably thin to the electronic warfare system 9S's had that when 9s remotely hacked Ozpin's all of the people's scrolls in front of everyone and had cat videos playing. Yeah, he just threw his hands up in the air and told us that could be their identity to stay here in Beacon. Alright, let me introduce you to my team and our sister team, I said as I held my scroll up to my door and the door unlocked itself. Jake, run. Weiss is insane. Ruby cried out before I heard something like fabric smashing into something at high speed. Jake Barris, don't you dare run. Weiss yelled as she went to wrench open the door and, in her haste, she merely ran face first into my chest and hugged me instinctively, so she didn't fall on her backside from the sudden stop. Without any shame, I hugged Weiss back and threaded my hands through her hair. Hello, Weiss, is this an Atlas greeting? Either way, I missed you too. I whispered to Weiss, making her jump back and blush before she saw the androids behind me, and her blush of embarrassment turned to an angry puce. Why the fuck does she look like me anyway? Weiss yelled, pointing at 9S, and I could only facepalm as the very same android in A2 approached Weiss. A2 hummed in thought as she seemingly inspected the shocked form of Weiss, who hadn't had the time to react to the android getting into her personal space. The reason for my facepalm was the nonchalant way A2 hit Weiss's berserk button. With both of her hands, A2 hefted up Weiss's breasts before looking back to 9S. Yeah, yours bigger. But maybe with children, they will grow. Weiss froze in response to A2's criticism before she sniffled and stepped back from the android. Then using her superhuman strength I was thrown across the room and into a bed, and once I got my bearings back I was met with Weiss burying her face into my chest as she dragged pillows and blankets over herself. This is just a terrible weird dream. I have cracked after the guy I like came back from his trip with girls that look just like Schnees and even a token blonde bimbo. Weiss muttered against me as she rubbed her face into my chest. I may have taken the joking a bit too far. I realized even as 60 muttered about not being a bimbo. Weiss. This isn't a dream, despite how nice as snuggling with you is. I said as I wrapped my arms around Weiss, who froze at my words. Nope, this is a dream. Otherwise, why would I let you palm my butt so easily? Weiss answered, and I nonchalantly squeezed my hand as Jean and Ruby gave me a look of confusion, while interestingly Pyrrha gave me a smile and nod at my act of holding Weiss. Okay, so your woman is delusion, Jake. Will your offspring carry such mental issues? Devola asked with honest worry in her voice, as she and the rest of my androids would hate for my first child to have Down syndrome or something. Girls, relax, I think Weiss is probably sleep deprived or something from the stress of me just disappearing, I said, with Weiss actually nodding to my words. Yes, I and the others with Ruby's sister's team went out into the Vale to look for you, and we couldn't find any info of you except that you were around the campsite you shared with Ren and Nora when we all first joined the school. Let me rest so I can awaken from this dream. Weiss all but ordered as she wrapped her legs around mine. Hearing her words, I couldn't help but feel bad, so I patted Weiss on her head, brushing my fingers gently through her hair, making her murmur in her already sleepy stupor. Sorry, I worried you all, I whispered to the room, with my teammates nodding with a shrug as they seemingly didn't hold it against me that I disappeared off the map and came back when I said I would. But I really should have said I was going to have my scroll off or something. Jake, we are going to get our luggage settled and such. 9S said as she took in our room and saw that there was no room for the half a dozen plus androids to spend however long here. While I was lying there, I had the errant thought of going back to Nier and just picking up the rest of my favorite androids in 2B, 6E, and Commander White, then just leaving the rest behind for a while so we can allow Devola and Popula to deep dive into the androids' programming to figure out the programming Yoarha models have. That is the back door for the machine army to initiate a logic virus. A few hours later, after I myself fell asleep in the iron grasp of Weiss, I was awoken by Weiss shifting to sit up and stare at me blankly while I blinked away my sleepy stupor. Those girls were real, weren't they? She said drily, and I nodded, with her covering her face with her hands and dragging it down her features before the hands fell off her face and landed with a soft thump on the bed we were laying on. You know, when my sister sat me down and explained that if I wanted a decent man, I needed to be ready for him to already have women. I didn't expect that man to have an entire harem and clone of me. She growled as she sat on my stomach, grabbed the collar of my shirt and began shaking me in her outrage. And even worse, they introduced themselves by checking my breast size of all things. Who the hell does that anyway? She cursed to herself before she locked eyes with me, but I cut her off. Speaking of which, I need to take you with me for a minute, I said as I literally did a sit-up with Weiss on my stomach, with her sliding down onto my lap, making her squeak at my manhandling as I shifted to hold her princess style as I walked out of room with Pyrrha seemingly the only one up awoke by Weiss's little tirade. Which, with Jean having 7 sisters and Ruby's chaotic household, it wouldn't surprise me if they could sleep through a mortal salvo. "Where are you taking me?" she hissed quietly as I carried her down the dorm room hallway. As much as I wanted to say something like, "to impregnate you," or something equally as cringe, I didn't respond, as the door in question was only at the end of the hallway, as it were. With a loud click, the door to my android's larger than average dorm room opened for me and Weiss. "You are going to meet and understand why you don't have anything to fear in a relationship," I said as A2 and 9S looked over to see me carrying Weiss in her nightdress. "A2, please pull up your shirt," I asked, and the android only gave me a look before she pulled her shirt up over her head and allowed her handful-sized breasts to be bared to the air. And more importantly, the thick lines of her android nature showing through. "Weiss, all these ladies are literally androids. They are no threat to any relationship we build. If anything, they will do everything in their power to encourage such a relationship," I said, with my face twitching at the memory of the girls going over pictures of my team and pinpointing Yang and Pyrrha as being the best breeding material with Blake, despite her having the hips and ass of a fertility goddess who was marked out for being abhuman filth. Weiss, with her thin proportions, literally ranked last, which even bugged 9S with how close they were in appearance, so I had to spend time consoling her and making sure she didn't suicide by machine army so she could justify getting stuffed into a longer-haired 2B or another model that was more feminine. Weiss, who I had at this point, was back on the ground, inspected A2's features, even tracing her human fingers down the lines segmenting A2's breasts before nodding in confirmation and walking over to 9S. "Open your mouth," she ordered, with 9S looking to me for confirmation, which made me inwardly beam at the acknowledgement that even when another human orders them to do something, even if it was something I would likely just say yes, they still deferred to looking for my opinion in the matter, as they knew that they were my androids and thus property, and no one else could make demands of them. Even as I nodded, Weiss inspected the mouth of 9S and even ran her finger seemingly along the sides of the android's cheeks until she was satisfied with whatever she was testing. "So you going to keep molesting 9S's poor mouth?" I asked teasingly, with Weiss's face twitching as she realized even the other androids were looking at her with a wry smile. "I can confirm, and I fully believe these are all androids, as no human has such perfect teeth and her cheeks have no ripples or even bumps from veins that you can feel," Weiss explained, and when I questioned about how she would think to check such a thing, her eyes went cold as she spoke. "Sometimes after a white fang bomb would go off, only dental records could find out whoever they blew up, so my family is very adept in finding out such things. Plus, as a precaution against illusion semblances, my family has a tiny metal cap on a certain tooth that acts as proof of our identity," Weiss explained sadly.